Hello, dear friends. Welcome to this evening talk brought to you by the Spiritist Society of Bournemouth and Poole Christian Spiritualist Church. I am Fabrício Assunção from the Spiritist Society of Bournemouth. We broadcast many Spiritist studies online each week in English or Portuguese. We are planning to reopen our face-to-face meeting again soon in Charminster, Bournemouth. If you'd like to learn more about any of our activities, please go to our Facebook page for further details. For our talk this evening, we are honored to have our guest speaker online from the United States, Kirsten DeMelo, who will be talking about Joanna de Angelis and our health. Thank you very much, Kirsten, for joining us tonight. A big welcome to you.
Thank you so much.
This one is one of our series of talks exploring the psychological series of books by the spirit of Joanna de Angelis. The book was psychographed by the famous spirit medium Divaldo Franco. Through Divaldo's mediumship, the spirit of Joanna has written hundreds of books during the last 40 years, including poems and other spiritual works. Now, a few words about the guest speakers, Kirsten DeMelo. Kirsten is an active member of the board of the Spiritist Society of Baltimore in the United States. She was born in Philadelphia to Spiritist parents and was a part of the Spiritist Society of Philadelphia before moving to Maryland 10 years ago. She has participated in the Spiritist Medical Congress and in many Spiritist symposiums. Kirsten has a Bachelor of Science degree and is a registered nurse, experienced in critical care, case management, and utilization management. But first, let us go to our friend Bob Williams from the Spiritist Society of Bournemouth for our opening prayer. Over to you, Bob.
Thank you, Fabrizio. Good evening, everyone. Let us gather our thoughts together in peace and love. Jesus said that when 2 or 3 are gathered together in his name, he is there in the midst of them. Lord God, we ask for your blessings on our meeting together this night. We pray that you would send the good spirits to help us, guide us, and protect us. May we yield to you so that we may put into good use in our lives now and always the good teachings that you send to us. Dear God, bless, we pray, the work done in your name by Poole Christian Spiritualist Church and the Spiritist Society of Bournemouth. Bless especially our guest speaker, Kirsten, her teaching to us, and all that she does in her ministry. We ask this in the name of Jesus the Christ. Amen.
Amen. Thank you, Bob. Now it's my pleasure to hand it over to Kirsten DeMelo for her talk on Joanna de Angelis and our health. Over to you.
Thank you so much, Bob and Fabrizio. And it is such an honor to be with this group this evening. And let me just make sure. Can you all see my PowerPoint? We're good? I think so. Okay, looks like it is sharing. So let me just say hello to everyone there in the group. I wish we could physically be together and just have that blessing of being in each other's energy and just enjoying that. But this is second best. And I really consider you all friends because we're under this spiritualist umbrella. We're all like minded. We have the same desires to just be overall healthy and happy on a deeply spiritual level that can transcend all other aspects of ourselves. So, when we talk about health, and myself coming from the healthcare field, Of course, there's the usual understanding of what health is as defined by the World Health Organization, and that is the state of complete physical, mental, and social well-being. And it's not just the absence of disease, but we would say it's not truly a complete understanding from a spiritualist or spiritist perspective, because we like to add in the spirit aspect or spirituality. So the sort of more so four total aspects, if we can break it down that way: mind, body, spirit, and emotions. And we say emotions slash feelings, even though those are technically kind of different. But Joanna Angelis, she really helps us to understand why our overall health, physical, mental, emotional, is linked to our own selves, the source of everything, which is us, our soul, our mind, our sense of self, or the self, rather. So we know that the ideal is to have this complete harmony. Everybody wants this. We could say there's probably nobody on this earth who doesn't want that complete and total health. So we all can agree on that. And we have advanced tremendously in medicine. I mean, even the last decade or so, we've made great advances. I mean, we can just look at the pandemic. I mean, the fact that we were able to create a vaccine from the mRNA, as opposed to the usual vaccine, which is just the attenuated virus most of the time. That's a huge leaps and bounds that we've made in the last decade to 15 years. So, it seems like we've really come a long way. But as Joanna shares with us in this particular book that we're sharing today, and the title of the book, and I'll show the cover of the book here in just a minute or so, is called Times of Health and Conscientiousness. The book is fantastic, and if you want to understand health, it's not the only book, obviously, that she has. You guys are probably at this point well aware of, but it's a phenomenal book for us as individuals to get in touch with ourselves, to understand where health comes from, and to really work on ourselves. So she says that medical science has broadened regarding health and disease, and even began to include other disciplines, which we call complementary and alternative medicine, or otherwise known as CAM, not sure what they call it in the UK, but that can include anything from like meditation, hypnosis, acupuncture, Ayurvedic medicine, so on and so forth. So we know that those types of things are already being accepted into what they call allopathic medicine. So there are a lot of practitioners here, primary care providers, that will encourage either meditation / therapy, or even other types of alternative approaches if the usual allopathic approaches are not working. Joanna says in this particular book, she says the modern findings of psychosomatic medicine have demonstrated that mental and emotional pathologies easily transfer to the body. So we see this already in medicine. And medicine already has determined that through the pathophysiology, the understanding of our body, that when we are stressed or when we are upset or extremely happy, there are different hormones that are released, catecholamines from the brain that are released and have a physical effect in our body. So we know our emotional state affects our body. There even is a type of heart disease that the layman's term for it is broken heart disease. And it essentially is just a type of heart disease where the heart is so stressed due to emotional stress, trauma, and that's a more extreme example. But just one more thing that just shows us that how we feel, our emotional health and well-being affects our physical body. And we know from a spiritist perspective, if we can look at ourselves as a spirit, paraspirit, and physical body, we know that if illness starts in the soul, it can pass through the paraspirit and manifest in the physical body. So there's a lot of healing that needs to go on. There's a lot of healing. But Joanna goes on to say about the modern findings of psychosomatic medicine. She says that the setting for the scene for various diseases coming from the mental and emotional pathologies. When the energy balance that sustains the cells is disturbed, the immunological factors become altered under bombardment by destructive mental discharges, which encourages deadly agents to take root and grow, causing the body to break down. So we're talking about at a very small level, at the cellular level. If any of you have ever taken microbiology, if you can, remember if you ever took one of those classes back in high school or in college, I mean, we're talking about the smallest of cells in our bodies that our emotions have effects on them and can cause them to have disturbances and thereby causing disease in the body. She goes on to say that's why it's important. It's imperative, she says, to usher in a new era of awareness, of responsibility. Now, that's important. Awareness of responsibility that we have as individuals, so that lucid and balanced individuals may establish the paradigms for harmonious moral and mental conduct in order to acquire the priceless assets of health. Let's just add in a little something as well that she talks throughout this book and many of her other books. Joanna DeAngelis heavily encourages self-compassion. When we're on this healing process, it's so easy for us to feel bad and guilty for all the stuff that we've done. We can easily look back and go, oh man, why did I do that? Or, oh my gosh, if I'm sick, it's because I'm a terrible person, or I've done something really wrong and now I'm being punished for it. And that's not exactly the correct perspective. What it is that if we find ourselves unbalanced and unhealthy or going through an illness, that's an opportunity for us to self-reflect. It's an opportunity for us to go deeper into ourselves. Say, what do I need to learn from this? And how connected am I to the divine, to my own spirituality, to my purpose, to my goals in this life? I mean, it's so easy for us to get caught up in the mundane, everyday hustle and bustle of life. But we truly believe because of this pandemic, many people were forced to really look at their situation, their lives, and reconsider their purpose. And ultimately, if you think about it, is happiness thrusted on us? Do some people just happen upon it? Do some people have luck? No, we choose health and happiness. It is a choice. Believe it or not. In this book, and again, and it's a similar theme that's often woven through a lot of Joanna DeAngelis's psychographed books, is this idea of choice, that we must make it verbally, mentally, and emotional choice to say, I want to be happy. Now, it's not a magical phrase. It's not like, Mary Poppins, and all of a sudden, everything's going to go perfect in the room. With the snap of the fingers is going to be completely, your soul's going to be clean, it's going to be perfect. No, it's actually it's a key to turn a lock, to open a doorway, to manifest in our lives that I want to be happy. Let me start doing the work. Well, we can choose happiness, our free will. In this book, the Spirit's book, which is part of the 5 books of Spiritism, we would say that one of the pillars of Spiritism. In this book, the Spirit's book, question 843, when Kardec asked the spirits the question, do humans act with free will? The highly evolved spirits answer, since they have freedom of thought, they have freedom of action. Without free will, human beings would be machines. So yes, we have free will. We have freedom of choice to choose what we want for our lives. And that's a big deal because that brings us back to our responsibility, our personal responsibility that we have for our own happiness, health, and well-being. Joanna DeAngelis, the great mind, we always refer to her as sort of like the spiritist psychologist, if you will. And she really touches on all areas of psychology and really is just opens our understanding, or deepens our understanding rather, of our emotions and emotional intelligence. She says, you are free to mark your life with the standard of happiness or affliction with which you want to live. Freedom is a law of life and is part of the concert of universal harmony. But she also says, do your best to make your life pleasant for yourself and for others. But it's important that everything that we do has a positive meaning. That's the important aspect of that, because we have free will. We can do whatever we choose to do, but it has to be for a higher and good purpose, a positive meaning, that it provides new stimuli, Joanna says, for you to continue your life, which ought to be characterized by enriching experiences. How many of us, because of this pandemic, have really appreciated our freedom as we slowly begin to have it now, and really want to make whatever aspect of freedom we have now, because before we were under the guidelines of the CDC, the World Health Organization. How many of us now really want to really appreciate the time that we have and really want to make it meaningful? And even for those of us who still had the opportunity to visit loved ones or close friends, even in very small groups here and there sparingly, it seems as though for many people, those moments had so much more meaning than before. At least we know we've experienced that here with our friends, family, and colleagues here in the US. So it's a paradigm shift that's happened as a benefit to this pandemic, if we could so call it a benefit, because we know it's wreaked havoc on many levels. But really, things like this happen, we know, to bring about healing, deeper healing, change, shifts in our mindset, and for us to reevaluate ourselves and our thoughts as well. What kind of thoughts are we having? I have a teenage daughter. Perhaps I can't call her teenage anymore. She's almost 20 years old. So she's a college student. And the vernacular and the, slangs, I'm sure they're slightly different. I know within the UK and the US, but there's a lot of different, slangs that they say in that age group. Some of you might have kids within that age group, or nieces or nephews, or maybe even students or patients. So you know that sometimes some of their verbiage, although intended to be funny, can actually be quite negative. And although you might not realize it, it's something that we also need to pay attention to, like what kind of thoughts we're having and what we're saying, because our words and our thoughts have power. Not this, magical Harry Potter in that respect, but real power to manifest in our lives. So it behooves us to really begin to pay attention more and more each day, the kind of thoughts that I am nurturing in my mind, in our minds. And oftentimes we tend to have an internal conversation with ourselves that's so unconscious that I don't even realize most of the time that we're having it. Sometimes you might pass by a mirror and go, oh gosh, I don't want to look in the mirror. And it's just like this internal dialogue you have with yourself that you're not even conscious of it. It's because it has become such a part of your being, and has become a habit, that we need to begin to be more aware of what we're saying and thinking about ourselves. In the Spirits book, they talk about this freedom of thought and this ability to, yes, when we're just thinking about things, it seems like, oh, I can think about anything. It's not going to hurt anyone. I could think about killing this person because I'm so angry with them, or what have you. But the good spirits bring us really something interesting. In the Spirits book, question 833, Kardec asks, is there something in human beings which escapes all constraint and through which they enjoy absolute freedom? And the spirits say, it is through thought that they enjoy unlimited freedom. For thought knows no obstacles. Its manifestation may be hindered, but not erased. And then they go on to share, well, are human beings responsible for their thought or thoughts? And the highly evolved spirits answer, they are responsible before God. God alone can know it, condemn it, or absolve it according to the divine justice. So we can have free will, and we can have freedom of thought as well, unlimited in our thoughts. But for everything we think about, there's a direct reaction and a cause and effect to it, because our thoughts have power. Modern science knows this. This isn't even something that we can say is completely boxed away in the area of spirituality, hocus pocus, and religion. Now, this is modern medicine now that we're talking about, recognizes how our emotions, and of course our thoughts are involved with our emotions, affect us physically and can affect the world around us, can even affect our perspective. How I'm thinking affects how I see things. Some people call it rose-colored glasses. There's other terms for it, but depending on how I see the world, how I see my circumstance, will depend upon how I'm experiencing everything around me, how I'm experiencing life. I'll give you a perfect example of a case I'll never forget, a real-life case that I had many years ago. And it was of this older woman I was taking care of when I worked in the intensive care unit here in the States. And every now and again, we used to get what was called overflow. So whenever another unit was really packed, we would get a patient to our unit, our floor, to the ICU. So just to give you some perspective and context, most of the time, majority of the patients that I took care of at that time were on life support, on a ventilator, and were hooked up to like 1,001 tubes, and most times were not conscious. So this particular patient, she was fully conscious, aware, awake, walking around. Again, she just was an overflow. She was a cancer patient. She was right there at the end. She had stage 4 breast cancer that had just completely gone throughout her body. So true to how we do things in nursing, I needed to go in, make my assessment, the whole 9 yards. So I went in expecting to find a particular type of person, maybe downcast or sad or bedridden or what have you. But much to my surprise, when I entered her private room, I swear I walked into a bubble that was so peaceful. And the smell, which if you've ever been to a hospital, is not necessarily always pleasant. But the smell in the room had a smell of flowers. And I remember walking in and hearing her sing, like lightly under her breath, and she was knitting. She was sitting in a chair, knitting, humming in the intensive care unit. Completely unheard of, very atypical for a day in the life of an ICU nurse. But that wasn't what struck me. When I began to do my assessment of her responses to my questions were so amazing. Her overall emotional state and well-being was far better than mine or anyone else I had encountered that evening, including the physicians on the floor and technicians. She was so positive and so uplifting and so loving and so kind that I couldn't escape that opportunity. I let the opportunity pass me by without asking her what was it that had her so happy and joyous. And she just said simply that in her life, she always put her spirituality, or God, first. And being kind to others was always her main goals. Like just a very simple life. And she trusted the process of whatever God had in store for her. And she wasn't sad or upset. She had all these words of wisdom to offer about life, how to live it, how to enjoy it, how to live a fulfilling life with putting God first and putting our overall health and well-being first. It was what I would call one for the books. One of the cases I'll never forget in my life, because her aura, her energy was so impactful, not only to myself, but to many other people, the physicians that went in to speak with her. It was like a healing session. It was the most bizarre thing, because you wouldn't think going in to see a sick person, but really, was she sick? Her physical body was, but her mind, her spirit, her thoughts, her words were better than all of ours. So it was quite liberating to know that someone in such a circumstance could choose to see life differently. So it gave us hope and inspiration that we don't have to look at things from a somber perspective. We don't have to look at illness from such a harsh perspective, but rather learn from it what we can learn and do as much as we can to prevent it and also take care of ourselves, but also to learn to move with it, move with the flow of life and see what it's trying to teach us. Because we're all artists. And it might be funny to say that, but we are artisans of our own lives. Joanna shares with us, and this is a copy of the front cover of the book for those of you who are interested in getting it at some point. And she says in this book, the immovable, deterministic imperatives concerning the physical body are life and death, although even these two aspects are subject to fatalism of incessant change. So we know that even physical death can change. We know that because there are cases within Spiritism of people that we know of, whether they're in the Andrea Louise books or actual cases of people that are alive today, such as there's a famous medium, Brazilian Spiritist medium named Raul Teixeira. And many years ago, many decades ago, he got into a very horrible car crash. And everyone else in the car died but him. And as soon as after the crash happened and he was thrown out of the car and he kind of came to, he was told by his mentor that he was given a moratorium, an extension of his life because of all the good that he was doing. And if you know anything about him, he's sort of similar to the medium that psychographed this book, Givaldo Franco in Brazil. He also wrote Teixeira. He is a spiritist medium, prolific medium, has psychographed many books. He also has a whole institution helping the poor and the sick there in Brazil. So his life has been a homage to Christ-like consciousness. So we know that there are ways to change our lives. Nothing is so much set in stone that we can't attenuate with our own good works, with our actions, with changing ourselves. We are not destined to be sad, depressed, sick. God doesn't make us to be destined for those things. We are destined for happiness, for joy. Joanna goes on to say, subject to actions which in turn trigger corresponding reactions, we are what we make of ourselves on our chosen pathway. So we choose that. We can choose happiness today. We can choose to want health, changing our thoughts, and stop repeating over and over again to ourselves, oh, well, this is just the way that I am. I've been this way for 30 years. I've always thought this way. Why change now? What's the point? It's never too late. Even like a minute left of our lives in the physical body has meaning and purpose. And this is just a quote that we bring from this particular writing, Inspiration for a Woman's Soul Choosing Happiness. Sometimes moving forward requires us to leave behind everything we know, even the person we thought we were. And that's a nod to changing our perspectives, changing our paradigms, and not viewing ourselves as we always have, but opening up a pathway to view ourselves in a much more abundant and happy way, to see all the possibilities, all the joy that we could feel. But there's so much going on, you might say, Kirsten, so much in my life. I mean, does God really want my healing? Am I really going to reach that route? Am I really going to be able to heal myself? I mean, does the divine look down and really say, yes, John, Bob, Mark, Louise, I want your healing for you. I want your happiness. Absolutely. We often peg God as a punishing God. Oh, if you do something wrong, God's going to punish you. It's a very old way of looking at religion and spirituality, karma. Instead, we should try to look at life that God creates the universe in such a way that the moment we begin to sort of go off our path or go off kilter, as some say, that we have something that brings us back to our balance. And most time that's pain, which is usually surrounded by some sort of illness. But in this particular book, Our Daily Bread, which coincides very well with this topic and the thoughts of Joanna de Angelis, and this book was psychographed by this Brazilian spiritist medium, Chico Xavier, also known, whose full name is Francisco Cândido Xavier. And in this book, which is psychographed by his spirit mentor, Emmanuel says, we are not interested only in regenerating the vessel through which we express ourselves, but above all, in correcting the spirit. So it's not just about physical wellness and health. It's about going to the source, which is us, the immortal spirit. He goes on to say, may humankind be freed from illness, but it must also understand the value of health. It is indeed as difficult for us to understand the hidden lesson of diseases in the body as it is to assimilate the call to sanctifying work that beckons to us through our physical healthiness. Do we understand the value of health? And do we also understand the hidden lessons behind disease? Instead of looking at disease as a form of God's punishment, but rather posing the question to ourselves, what can I learn from this? Whether it's something as simple as, I need to eat better, I need to exercise, I need to be healthy, I need to get better sleep, I need to make better choices, I need to change my way of thinking, I need to find healing through these traumas. Whatever it is, whatever the answer to that question is, it's going to be different for everyone. It's going to look different for everyone, and that's okay. Because everyone's ideology, if you will, the cause is different. But Joanna says there are people who prefer to gripe, complain, storing up self-serving pessimism. They use their large number of mentally created ailments to barter for love. So people who continuously complain about illness, their illness, to maybe get people to feel sorry for them, and they're always pessimistic. She says, others adopt imagined sufferings to blackmail their loved ones for attention and physical affection. However, such attention is never enough for them. They do not realize that what they are doing will only dry up the generous supply offered to them. So yeah, she touches on the aspect that there are people that utilize illness in a really negative way to emotionally blackmail ones around them. There are cases of this. There are some extreme cases of this in society, cases where it's led to murder even, which we won't bring those cases now, but they're out there, and Joanna's addressing it. But never does she tell us, are we the ones to make the decision to say who is doing what? We must always be mindful of ourself, how we are behaving, how we are acting. We have to turn to our own heart, our own mind, and do our own self-evaluation, and not be the first one to cast the stone. Because each one of us has our own flaws, to some degree or another. So what do I do? Well, the spiritist philosophy teaches us that without charity, there's no salvation. So much so that this already has been backed up by science. There's work out there that has proven that living a life of gratitude and giving is life-changing. It changes who we are. It makes us better. Not only is it beneficial for the person receiving it, but also for us. So that strife to do good, to do better, it's like setting a goal for ourselves. So for instance, you get up in the morning, you say, okay, I want to do at least one good thing for myself today and one good thing for someone else. And make it a habit that, okay, wherever I go today, whether it's just walking to the mailbox, depending upon where you're living and the restrictions that you might have because of what's going on in the world. But let that moment that you're out and about, whether it's in public or just in your local neighborhood or even with your family, let us make a conscious decision to be better, to do more good. Joanna says, nobody feels good among people who use misfortune as a false solution to their existential conflicts. The emotional duress ends up producing false friendships, embarrassing situations, and more insecurity. You can and should be happy. It is your free choice. It is a choice. She tells us to choose happiness. And through that, we will find health. So much so that it'll manifest through the different layers of who we are. Mind, body, and spirit, if you will. She says, if you find yourself pulling a wagon of woes, strive to do good, and you will unhitch yourself from it. It's a psychological trick, if you will. It's not really a trick, though. It's a tip, perhaps. When we change our perspective, when we have this paradigm shift, or when we are able to reframe our situation, when we look at our lives, what's the story? What's the narrative we're always telling people? Oh, my life is so hard. It's so difficult. I've been through X, Y, and Z. And that could be the perfect truth. You have been through X, Y, and Z. But let's begin to change the narrative that we're sharing. Yes, well, I've been through this, but I'm going through a healing process. I'm learning, I'm growing. I'm doing my best. I want to be happy. Let's begin changing our verbiage, what we're saying, not just to ourselves when we're alone. especially now when it seems like we have much more time to be just with ourselves than before, although some of that's changing now. But what are we saying to others? And are we rehashing all the negative traumas that have happened to us, with the exception of when you're actually with a therapist, and that's the whole point of that session? But how many times do we retell our sad stories? We're giving it life. That's not to say that we can't share our challenges. We should with one another, especially when we need guidance or support of some kind. But let us make that firm decision within our heart and within our soul to be happy and to keep reminding yourself, I want to be happy and I deserve to be happy. And we don't have to wait for things to be perfect to practice good things, to practice goodness, to practice charity. We're not talking about donating a wing to a hospital. Unless you find yourself in that financial situation, God bless you and wonderful. But it's in the everyday things. It's in the everyday things of how we treat people, the people at the corner store, at the grocery store, telemarketers that call your phone. And one of the great American writers, some of you may be familiar with her because she was pretty famous, especially before she passed away, Dr. Maya Angelou. She says, if you don't like something, change it. If you can't change it, change your attitude. Change your perspective. Change how you're looking at it. Reframe it. Because that'll make the difference between health and illness. Joanna DeAngelis often talks about that sometimes our problem is a problem of fixation. When we're fixated on an idea that this is the narrative of my life, this is how it's always going to be, and it doesn't have to. I don't have to play the role that society has put me in. Well, I'm the person who has this illness, I'm this, and I'm that, and I'm that, and that's all that I'll ever be. Well, if that's a perspective we have, yeah, sure. We will live up to that. But we don't have to. We can change how we view things, and we can change our health. We go on to learn with Joanna, not only in this book, but in many other books, about choosing health and well-being. She says the difficulty of today is the effect of the folly of the past. Life is renewed at every moment. So we reap what we sow. Pure and simple. It's just a law. God created it, and we're living it. So we've done something in the past, and now I'm in a situation that I've created for myself. But that doesn't mean that I need to stay in that situation. Things can and will get better, and will get better sooner if we choose that, if we make the necessary shifts. And this part where she says life is renewed at every moment is very important. You might just think it's so philosophical, it's so, abstract. And it's really not. It's very scientific, believe it or not. Our cells are constantly renewing themselves. So we have the ability to gain health. You might not see it right away. It might not be reflected on a test or an exam right away. But within yourself, which is the source of all things, it will begin to change. As they say, Rome was not built in a day. Little by little, we can begin to shift our health, dedicating ourselves to goodness and a spiritual life where we are able to put God first as a priority in our lives, because that's what connects us to source, to divinity. It's like this constant connection. Joanna goes on to say in this particular excerpt from the book, Times of Health and Conscientiousness, she says, dire situations change for the better, like shadow-filled landscapes suddenly lit by the sun. So just when we think when all is lost, it can change in an instant as well. We might not even see it coming, but things can change for the better. We have to hold out hope. She says, do not make a truce with misfortune, idleness, or complaining. Just not just accept it. This is just the way that it is, and nothing's ever going to change. The only person we can change is ourselves. We shouldn't have an expectation of changing anybody else. It's a fallacy. It's a fantasy. We can't change anybody else. We can have an effect on other people, positive and negative. We cannot go into their being and change them. So we need to work on ourselves, work on who we are. And she reminds us that we are the master of our destiny, and its meeting point for you is the infinite. So as they say, the sky's the limit. Those who devalue, discredit, and invalidate themselves get left behind. What is she talking about? The law of progress. We are constantly evolving and moving forward. And if we want to stay stationary for a time because we were just, we're angry, we're upset, we're crossing our arms and angry with God, that's our choice for a time. We can't be like that forever, but for a time. And the rest of the world will move forward. She goes on to say it's imperative that you get positively involved with the divine plan. Those who do not never grow. If you would rather suffer, you are free to do so until you finally opt for well-being. So don't make mountains out of molehills. No one is destined to suffer. Suffering is always the result of a negative action. It's never the cause. So it's temporary at best. And its sole purpose is to help us realign back to balance. It's not here to cause us, because God is, horrible and punishing and a sadist. No, completely opposite. He wants our health and well-being. He, she. Each one of us have our own individual spirit guide that wants to help us. I always like to say it's akin to having your own personal trainer, except it's in the spirit realm. Why not access it? It's free of charge. No debit card or credit card required. We can access our spirit guide for guidance. How cool is that? We think it's pretty awesome. And at any time in our journey, we can access that help. There doesn't have to be a whole special lighting of specific candles. You could be anywhere. Say anything. It's the most simplest of words. And just say, spirit guides. Some people have names for their spirit guides. Some people know their spirit guides' names. But you can say, spirit guide, I'm going through a difficult time. I need assistance. Please help me, guide me. And God blesses us. This divine creator blesses us with these spirit guides to help us navigate through life, especially the hard times. So we can do better, think better. But oftentimes they're at a higher vibration than we are. So we need to higher our vibration through prayer, through changing our thoughts, to be able to be more readily accessible to them. And just really wanting the desire. But first and foremost, Joanna tells us we need to get involved with the divine plan. So what is the divine plan for me, for you, for all of us? How do we find out what that is? How can I access it? How can I maintain continued contact? It's quite simple. Connecting through prayer is the portal. And asking, verbalizing deep within your soul, and you even can say it out loud. Asking through prayer, which is nothing more than a conversation. It's us connecting to the divine's Wi-Fi, if you will. And just saying, I want to be connected to this divinity. I want to be connected to whatever the divine plan is for me, whatever I'm meant to do, because each one of us has a purpose of us being born. It's not just willy-nilly. God decides to just randomly throw souls into bodies or what have you. We have purpose, reasons why we're here. Some are more extravagant purposes, like finding a cure for cancer, and the rest of us is just about being a good person. So we ought to think about that on a daily basis. How am I connecting to the divine? Am I connected to the divine? What is the divine plan for me? And if we just listen through inspiration, we will be guided to do our best and to be connected, because a lot of the time we are already within our souls. We know what we're meant to do. We may not consciously remember, but deep, deep down within us, that information is there. So let us connect. Let us not be afraid. Let's, take life by the reins and let's start making changes. And one of these ways Joanna DeAndrea shares with us, she says, without a guilty conscience, sentimentality, or coercion, make an honest evaluation of your life and awaken to what you should produce that is good, useful, and constructive, fully invested in your happiness. And you might think, Kirsten, well, how do I make an honest evaluation? Where do I begin? Like there's so much. We get this question often, like, where do I start? Well, we can start wherever you'd like. The internet has a plethora of things, writing prompts, and this is just one I'm going to share. You can find this on the Pinterest app or on Pinterest. How can I improve? But you can find many writing prompts to make an honest evaluation. Journaling really helps. Or if you prefer, you can use prompts. There's a lot of books that are out there on the market it's a journal filled with writing prompts, and the purpose is for us to get to know who we are, evaluate who we are, because we can't change what we're not aware of. We can't change what we're not aware of. So thus, I need to become more self-aware. Because we are destined for happiness. We're not destined to suffer. We're not destined for illness. No. If you can imagine the most blissful scenario in your mind, a version of yourself where you are completely happy and content and joyful in your heart and healthy in all aspects. Imagine that vision of yourself and keep seeing yourself in that way, and know that that is the goal. That is the goal that God supports for you, that the good spirits, your spirit guide, all want for you. And with connecting with the divine, doing all the good that we can do that is within our power to do, learning to change and love ourselves, and utilizing prayer, these are just some of the cornerstone, the keys to unlocking that happiness and health that's just waiting for us. And this is just one more other little tidbit that's pretty popular right now. It's existed for as long as I can remember, since I was a young teenager. The idea of creating a vision board. I don't know about anyone else, but some people are visual learners, and it's really helpful to kind of just put out on a board or even just a really large piece of paper. And you can go on Pinterest and find out, different ideas of how to do this. But this is helpful. But if you're not into like the whole board making, vision board making, you can just simply write it down on a piece of paper, your goals. It is so important that we set goals for ourselves. It doesn't matter where we are at in life. It doesn't matter our age or what's going on. Let's set goals for ourselves to be a better person, whether it's to lose weight, to get healthy, to have better relationships with ourselves and others. But let's set goals so we know that every day, whatever we're working on is for our own benefit and it's something positive that not only is going to benefit me, but it's going to benefit others. Because you may feel like we are just a drop in the ocean, but if all the drops in the ocean turn green or purple, the whole ocean becomes purple. So if we all do our own part in working on ourselves, the world's going to become a better place. Jesus said, before kingdoms change, man must change. Before we see this reflected in society, us as individuals, at the cellular level, we must change. And don't forget to have compassion for yourself. Joanna reminds us the more we work on ourselves, and we see that it's not easy to work on ourselves, the more compassion we will have for others as well, because we know that it's hard. The road to healing and wellness, because we haven't made it our life's purpose for all lifetimes that we've lived, we're going to encounter the challenges. But the point is to keep going, keep moving, keep striving. So those are the thoughts I want to leave you with. My friends, thank you so much for being here and participating and just being present. Thank you so much. And thank you to Fabrizio and Bob and Mr. Laurie and all of you for having us here today.
Thank you very much, Kirsten. I am actually speechless because, yes, I've been reflecting all along during the talk. And one thing that really resonates to me is we always say, oh, I want to change. And then we say, oh, this is not good. Need to be changed. And sometimes we spend far too much time concentrating on the problem itself rather than focus on the solution of it. And then throughout your talk, Joanna takes us on this journey, how we can change this mindset to change the focus on something that is negative, is upsetting us, to something that is transforming and transformational, that what we need in our change, in our life. That is powerful.
It is. Her words are so powerful. And we love her writings, and it's just amazing, really.
I think the recent experience of so many people across the world of the pandemic, those of us who have at present survived the issue, gives us great cause to be grateful for the many things we have taken for granted. I think gratitude is a marvelous medicine which we should take great big doses of every day.
Yes.
The pandemic has put that into focus. But aside from the pandemic, there are so many blessings that possibly we never count, but they're always there. And that would uplift the soul, uplift the spirit, and uplift our well-being every day.
Absolutely. Absolutely. If I can say one added thing that I didn't mention, that there are times when even when we are trying to be positive and find gratitude, that we are going through an illness, that we are unable to see the positive. And oftentimes that will require medical intervention, whether that's seeing a therapist, a psychiatrist, getting on medication. And that's all okay. There's nothing wrong with any of that. Medication, therapies, all that just allows us to find our way back to our own healing. And that's what it's about. So I just wanted to share that as well.
Lovely. We have some comments here coming up from Facebook. If anyone is listening to us, want to ask any questions, feel free to ask any questions. Pan Garland, he says, clear, concise, and I follow most of things. Thank you for emphasizing it.
Thank you. Thank you, Pam.
And then I have Cleo says, amazing talking, incredible. Thank you very much, Kirsten, and thank you for all of you that organized it.
Thank you, Cleo.
Okay, before we go to the closing, is there any closing remarks you'd like to make?
Just that we have the power within us, as we learn through Spiritism and the books and the writings of Joanna de Angelis, we have the power within us to make changes and to find health and well-being. We have the power to, within us, at our fingertips, to connect with the divine, to completely change our lives, to go from Saul to Paul. But it takes effort. It takes work. It's not as simple as like just saying the words, I want to change, I want to do better. But actually, rolling up our sleeves, going to the gym, sometimes the spiritual, mental, emotional gym, and start doing the work. And it'll be worth it because we are worth it. So those are just the final thoughts.
Thank you. There is a question that popped up that I cannot let that question behind because it's from our lovely Daniel. He says, what would you say to someone that have been gone through many illness and lost hope?
It's a great question. I think many people go through this. I think this could probably be many people, this will resonate with them. They've gone through several illnesses, and it's very common, especially with people who have chronic illnesses, to experience things like depression, to experience depressive thoughts, or to lose hope. So that's why I was mentioning that if you find yourself where you simply cannot get out of bed, or you just, even as hard as you try, you just cannot seem to think more positively, we definitely always recommend for people, first and foremost, to see your primary care provider, your generalist, if you will, whether it's a naturopathic provider, Ayurvedic medicine, or what have you. Make sure you speak with a healthcare professional so they can best address the issues, because even with chronic illnesses, sometimes we can end up developing depression. Why? Because we have so many years of that chronic illness and so many years of negative thoughts about that we actually develop a chemical imbalance in our brain, and that needs to be fixed, or at least at best assisted with medication to allow us to begin to change ourselves, because without it, we may not be able to find hope again because it's chemically already impossible. So you have to also remember that we are spiritual beings having a human experience. So we're sort of in this physical body, and we need to take care of it as such. But for those who haven't reached that extreme, but they've just sort of lost hope and think of it as just hopeless, I would say every case is different, and it's a question that's so difficult to generalize because everyone's process of thinking is different. But what I would say is that if you are losing hope because you've had illness after illness or many illnesses, I would say stop and pray. ask for guidance. If that's what you're looking for, if you are ready to change your thoughts, if you're ready, do you want a different life? Because there are times with people that they don't want to change their perspective. They're basking in their negativeness, if you will. But if the person is open and you're having a conversation and they're expressing to you that they've lost hope, but they wish they could get it back, then you can offer them this idea of prayer or connecting to the divine. Some people will use meditation or yoga, acupuncture, all different things just to help us get back on track. Because oftentimes that person has been in that mindset for so long that they need a lot of his outside assistance to come back to their balance. So, Daniel, I don't know if I answered your question, but I don't like generalizing because, I don't want someone to hear this talk and think, what I'm saying, that's what they have to do, when in fact they have to do something slightly different. So every case is, unique in and of itself. But I would say prayer is something that anyone can utilize at any time and is most helpful in finding, your center and your balance and guidance. Thank you for your question, Daniel.
And that is definitely a lovely message for us to hold into, isn't it? When, for instance, if you're going through a difficult time and then maybe connecting with the divine, and then through prayer, we can get inspiration how we can change things.
Yeah.
Not necessarily ask God to remove the obstacle, but maybe ask the Spirit to guide us through how we can go over this obstacle and learn with it.
Mm-hmm. And if I can add to that, Fabrizio, one of the things that we've always kept in the back of our minds and share with other people, because at our Spiritist Center, over the years, we offer fraternal assistance. We talk to people that are going through difficult situations, and one of the comforting thoughts that we share often is that when you're going through something really difficult, emotional, mental, physical, what have you, whatever situation you find yourself in, if you can manage to go through it and learn from it, then one day you can help somebody else also endure that time. Because you can offer that solace to them, like, hey, I've been through it. I've come out the other end. It's going to be okay. Take it day by day, etc., etc. We have found that that's one of the most consoling things, especially when we're going through something really, really difficult, is meeting other people who've gone through equally as difficult things and saying, hey, I got through it, and you can get through it too. So think of all the benefits that can come of you learning and being able to help other people in the future who have gone through those situations.
Cool. Kirsten, thank you very much for being here with us here
Thank
tonight.
you.
Our next talk is on the 4th of June, and our speaker is Tanya. She'll be talking to us from Ireland. The topic is yet to be confirmed. I will, as soon as I find out what the topic is, I will be sharing with you guys on Facebook. And I'd like to say also thank you very much for everyone that's been listening and been with us via Facebook or YouTube. And I would like to go to Bob now for the closing prayer. It's over to you, Bob.
Thank you, Fabrizio, and thank you very much, Kirsten, for a very, very interesting talk and for sharing with us such marvelous teaching. So let's gather our thoughts in a prayer to our Master God. Thank you, dear God, for our meeting together tonight and for what Kirsten has shared with us. May we put to good use the teaching that we have heard. May we put to use this teaching for your glory, for our good and for the good of your world. May you send the good spirits to guide us and our guardian angels to protect us, to show us the way. May we choose wellness. May we choose happiness. under your guidance and your protection. In the name of Jesus our Master. Amen.
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 Thank you all. I see you in 2 weeks' time, and good night.